If they're using your materials and you're telling them where to go, when to go, they're your employee. They're not a contract worker. There's a lot of stagers here that are not in our chapter, and I would say they are the ones that feel more threatened, and that it's a competition versus collaborate. But at the end of the day, there's enough work for everybody, and if we all learn how to price well and stage professionally, it's going to lift the industry as a whole. Show our particular market in the Twin Cities, like, this is the group of stagers that are in this market, and they're professional and they do a great job. And
welcome to another episode of the Staging Insider. I am your host, Felicia Pulley. I am the creative director at the Real Estate Staging Association. We are the industry's only nonprofit trade association, and we've been serving the staging community for 18 years this year. Pretty incredible. I've had the privilege of working at RESA for almost a decade now, and one of my favorite parts of the job is getting to know stagers' stories, their backgrounds before they became a stager, and really what drives them to get into this world of staging, because it is not as easy as it looks. It's not all about making things look pretty. The business side of it can be really brutal, especially if you don't have a business background. So I'm always inspired by stagers who decide to take a leap into owning their own business. And I saw Susie, who's my guest today, on one of our Facebook groups, and she was talking about how she recently survived an audit. And I knew that I had to have her on. I've always admired Susie's work. I've admired watching her and her team on Instagram because they look like they have so much fun together. And every time I've been around her at events like RESACon, you could just feel really great energy from her. So I want to welcome Susie. She is the founder of SP Designs, and they are based out of Minnesota. So welcome today, Susie. How are you?
thank you, Felicia. I'm good. I'm really happy to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. I love, like I mentioned in the beginnings, hearing about stagers and why they decided to get into this industry and what their life was like before they started staging. So, before you were a stager, what was your life like?
I was in a career. I was a stay-at-home mom as well for a while, but at the time that I started staging, I was in a career working full time as an art director and photo stylist in the furniture industry. So there was, that natural progression from just
Mhm.
from being in the furniture industry. My background is in graphic design, so I worked on a marketing team putting together ads for this furniture company in Minnesota. I did that for 7 years, and big part of that, was working in a photo studio where I would work right alongside photographers and figure out everything that was going to go into a room shot, whether it was picking the paint color, accessorizing it, figuring out what furniture goes together, and then even coming at it from, what angle do we want to shoot it at. And then also marketing that, like
Mhm.
marketing it to, of course, the consumer. So that's my background.
So, when you say marketing it to the consumer, did you go as involved as doing the copyright? Were you a part of that process as well, or was it just the visual
The
process?
visual, yeah, the visual.
Okay.
Yep.
And how did you jump into that industry? Like, how did you get that job? Was that something that you knew that you wanted to do, or did you just land on that job after you graduated college?
I landed it, and quite honestly, when in the early days when they asked me to style in a photo studio, I was like, okay. I mean, I had no experience in that. My degree was graphic design, so I thought I would be doing all page layout, so to speak.
Mhm.
But I was very excited about that because I had always been doing that. I liked to decorate my apartment at the time, and my bedroom as a kid growing up. So um, I did not I don't know. I don't know how I got it. It was pretty awesome.
Did you have family that was in the design industry at all or art-inspired home, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. So, a little bit of background. I am adopted and
Okay.
have met my birth parents, and in meeting them, did find out that yes. So my biological grandfather owned a furniture company or furniture store for many years in the Twin Cities. My biological mother worked in sales for that and has always had a love for interiors. My biological father installs custom window treatments, has been doing that
Wow.
for the majority of his career. So certainly there's a inherent trait about that I have.
How old were you when you met them?
24, 24.
So your love for those things had already developed before you even knew that.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
pretty incredible. Who is your sounding board then when it comes to your business? Do you have a key group of people that you go to, and is it the same group from when you first started your business?
Well, RESA's played a huge role, not only the national organization, but our local chapter. We are a group of mostly women. Now there are
Mhm.
a few men in it, but we really we care about helping each other grow and collaborating. And so if I texted Kelly this week and asked her a question, and I texted Melissa in LA a question about something, and they're both RESA members, and I know that I can go to them
Mhm.
and trust them and get feedback and ideas from them. So that is for sure the key aspect of or who I go to. But then also about 6 months ago, I started working with a business coach.
Oh, good for
And
you.
that has been a really good sort of step for me.
Okay, I definitely wanna dive into the coaching thing more later, but I just realized we didn't even talk about how you started the business.
Oh, yeah.
So, how did you transition then from your career working a 9 to 5 to then even understand that staging was a thing? I understand your styling, and I also know Michelle Minch. I don't know if you know this about her, but she was also a creative director for commercials and for TV, so she also has that background. So it's pretty I went to school also for production design for film. So I could see where it's an easy transition because you're marketing something and you're thinking about it from the perspective of a lens and how you're making somebody feel. But how did you discover that staging was a thing and that you could apply those skills and start your business?
Yeah. I think I got into my 40s and kind of started feeling like I didn't want to be working in corporate America necessarily. The particular role that I was in was changing a little bit more, and being less creative and more um, production and a little bit of overseeing people. And then I also kind of saw that I had hit sort of a limit, so to speak, of what I could make financially, and so I started to explore what's next. And quite honestly, I think like a lot of stagers, you go back to as a kid, I was rearranging furniture in my bedroom and in our living room, and always had friends and family ask to for me for my help in what color should I paint and decorate, etc. So I had a couple of real estate agents who were friends, and I really just started talking to them and asking them lots of questions about staging. That came to mind pretty quickly because I felt like had been staging inside a photo studio for years,
Mhm.
and so I just started asking questions. How much will you pay a stager? What are you looking for when you hire a stager? What are sort of the different aspects of staging? And so for a year, I tried to meet as many agents as I could. So I worked full time for a year while I started up my staging business as sort of a side gig.
Okay.
Uh,
Did your boss know that you were doing that, or did you keep it to yourself?
I kept it quiet for the first maybe 6 months as I was really trying to figure out if it was something that was sustainable. And
Okay.
then, and then eventually word got out, I think probably because of social media, I started posting things. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then after that 6-month process and everybody kind of knew, did you feel at that point like, all right, now I need to decide, am I really going to do this? Or like, how did you decide to take the jump to leave the 9 to 5? Because that is scary,
Yeah.
knowing that you have that income and you've got a family. Like, how did you decide that it was time to do that?
Yeah. I think it was, kind of a mutual decision with my husband. I had reached a point where I was very busy working
Mhm.
nights and weekends, trying to maintain both, and just felt like I had reached a point after a year that I got to go for it. Otherwise, because I can't keep doing both.
Right.
And
Not
so,
sustainable.
yeah, so
Right.
took that leap of faith and haven't looked back. It's been amazing.
In that first year, were you doing occupied and vacant?
In the first year, I was doing a lot of consultations, a lot.
Mhm.
It wasn't a lot at the time, but consultations, and that's when I started. Yep, I did a little bit of occupied, where I would just bring in some accessories and small items, and then I also started to be able to build an inventory. I was introduced to a builder who had a model for the parade of homes, and that was the first job where I took that bigger chunk of money and invested all of it into furniture and decor, and really started to build an inventory.
So for those who are listening and don't know what the Parade of Homes is, why don't you tell them what that is and why that was such a big deal that you got selected to do that so early in your career?
Yeah, so it's a showcase for builders to build custom or not homes, and then the public is invited to tour those homes for a period of time in the spring and in the fall.
And
So
were you like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I got selected for this? How am I going to come up with the capital to fund all of this inventory? Or was it already on your strategic plan that that was something you were going for?
no, I had no plan.
Okay.
I
Like
had
most
no plan.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, so this agent introduced me to this builder, and I somehow, I always say kind of fake it till you make it, like a lot of people do. And I remember where I was sitting talking to him on the phone, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then somehow I figured out a price, and he did negotiate with me a little bit. I remember that, but he said yes, and yeah, it blew my mind. And then
So
I
how did you do you remember how you figured out that price? And like now that you have been in the business a little while, are you like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I charged that?" Or do you feel like your pricing was in line?
I don't I should try and find that estimate. I don't feel like it was out of line.
Mhm.
I don't feel like it was super low. And I still work with this builder, and um, he doesn't negotiate with me anymore. So maybe I was a little bit high in that initial
Mm.
price, or
Well,
maybe
that's not bad. Yeah, you were right on par with what you should have been, it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah. I
So
still feel good about it.
did you feel like you struggled at all with pricing in the beginning? Because I feel like that is like the number one issue. It takes a lot of people time to realize their worth. And as a creator myself, I get that because you just want to be doing the work and you're not sure what people are willing to pay. So you'll just put anything out there in the beginning. A lot of stagers find that they do that and then it's hard to backtrack. Did you experience that at all? Or were you one of the lucky ones who did enough research and price yourself right to begin with?
No, for sure. Pricing is a game, and it
Yeah.
has been. And I had plenty of jobs early on that I was like, I'm doing this vacant stage for $1,500, which I would never do now.
Hmm.
Um, and then you're right, you have to kind of backpedal your way out of there when you get future business from that person, as you realize like that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Um, and so figuring out pricing, I think it was probably, somewhat through RESACon, going to those and learning from other stagers how to price, um, and a lot of trial and error.
Hmm.
I would send out bids and I would get no's, um, and then adjust my pricing, make it a little bit lower until kind of I found a sweet spot. Even now, sometimes I'll get a lot of yeses, and I'm like, "Well, I think I need to increase my pricing a little
Yep.
bit."
That's what
See if
they say. If you're
yeah,
getting like 75% yeses, then it's time to raise your prices.
yeah,
That's what they say. It's like, oh, well, that's good to know.
yeah.
It does make sense though. If people are so eager to say, oh, go ahead, go ahead. So did you have sales experience? No.
No, I'm not a salesperson by nature by any means. Um,
Is
so
that still a struggle for you, or have you felt like you've been able to gain a little bit of confidence? Have you passed that off to somebody who does like to do it? How do you handle that part? Because it's a huge part of doing business.
yeah, yeah. I think I've figured out how to like a little bit. Like I kind of like the thrill of the hunt, so to speak. Um,
Hmm.
and and I in my emails when I do send an estimate, I always like kind of put it. I like to put it in the consumer's hands by saying like, here's a couple of options for you to consider. If you decide, next steps are this, 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 so that it's not sitting out there wondering, and they're wondering like, well, I want to do it, but I don't know, what's next, and so I think
Hmm.
that helps a little bit. I also provide options, as I think a lot of stagers do. I figured out through a actually through a different business conference that if you can provide three
Yeah.
pricing options, that's good because then they might go for the middle one,
Hmm.
and oftentimes I'm surprised that they go for the highest price one.
Highest one. Yeah. You're hoping they'll go for the middle, and then they usually do go for the highest one.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
that's always a nice little bonus. And then you could do your little happy dance, and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad after all.
pricing it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
figure out, and like I said, it's a lot of trial and error.
It is. It's something that you're probably always going to be working on when it comes to your business. I don't think I've met a stager who's like, yeah, I've got that, I'll figure it out, and I don't need to ever like look at it again. I don't struggle with any aspect of it. I mean, it's not
One
the funnest part of the business for sure.
Yeah. One thing that I find is super helpful to ask if you get a no, and if it's whether or not you know the agent, like ask, was
Hmm.
I anywhere near? Was it about price? Was I anywhere near, the other bids? Would you share what those bids are? Because that's really valuable information. If you
It
can
is.
get that feedback, it's super helpful.
So do you keep a spreadsheet of all of that data anywhere and look at it every once in a while?
No, I don't keep a spreadsheet of that. I keep a spreadsheet of my stagings and what I
Hmm.
charged,
Okay.
but not of the
Not
no.
of the feedbacks. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I do know there is one stager who has an entire system for documenting all of
Oh,
their rejections. And then they, once a quarter, will review all of that to see if there's anything that they can incorporate or something that keeps coming up over and over again maybe another company is doing that they're not doing so that they could see if that's a value add that makes sense for their business. So maybe
yeah,
that's something that you can incorporate this year.
yeah. I like that. Yeah, yeah.
So, how long into your business was it when you decided that it was time for you to bring on an employee?
Let's see, about 5 years.
Okay.
I started in 2016 and I hired in 2021.
It's a long time to do it yourself.
Yes.
And were
And
you doing it like 5 days a week, or what was your schedule like during that time frame?
yeah, for sure. 5 days a week. So I've always made it a practice not to work weekends. I mean, very early on, I maybe did a consult on a Saturday if my husband was traveling for work,
Mhm.
but I'm pretty adamant about not working weekends. But during the week, I was working 60, 70 hours a week,
Wow.
years to just to try to build a business and do all the things that are involved in that. Obviously
Eh,
the staging is front and center, but all the
yeah.
other things that go into it.
All of the business hours that you have to do at home, doing all of your paperwork. I'm sure that's where a lot of that extra time came from. Were you
For sure.
hiring movers then?
Yes, so
Okay.
early on, I hired, college kids, myself,
Hmm.
my husband, etc. I started using professional movers probably in about 2018, 2019, so pretty early. Went through, some pretty junky movers, but eventually found some really professional, on time, respectful, great group of guys that they're my go to.
And are you still working with them today?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Are
Yeah.
you like their primary, like, do they have a whole team that's just dedicated to helping you?
It's funny you asked that. I just met with the owner in January, or maybe it was December, to talk about, like, I want to only use you because you
Mm.
are the best,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have a formal agreement signed, but so far this year, every time I ask for a job, a D stage or a stage, they're available. So, and that's been kind of a game changer. Like, I don't stress nearly as much as I used to about, well, I'll see if I can get movers on that date. They just have really changed that aspect for me.
So let's talk about the stress aspect of owning a business. On top of working all of the hours that you have to work to keep the business functioning, it doesn't stop there. I'm sure your brain is going to keep going and going. If you're anything like me, you're going to be laying in bed and thinking about all of the things. Is that something that you struggle with or have struggled with?
For sure.
Yeah.
I stage in my brain during the middle of the night, especially if I have a big job. Um, yes, or what inventory do I need to buy for this particular job? Is it going to get here on time? Etc. All those things for sure are stressors. I Since hiring, it certainly is less
Hmm.
because I have a team now that really helps to alleviate some of the workload.
So was the fact that you were overworking yourself one of the reasons why you did decide to hire, or did you just know, like, I want to be able to expand this into something larger than just what I can do by myself? What was the reason? Because I know not everybody wants employees. Some people decide that they just want to do a solo thing. They don't want the headache of managing and the overhead of managing. Did you feel that way in the beginning and something shifted, or was this always the plan?
Um, I don't know that it was always the plan. I think it was a progression, as I had been doing it for a few years, started seeing that I didn't necessarily want to be the one going into all the houses and staging.
Mm.
Early on, I thought, no way, I always want to do that. I always want that creativity every day. But now I kind of prefer not to. So
Wow.
I've really evolved quite a bit in that. I shouldn't say I prefer not to, but I'd like to do maybe 30% of the
Okay.
things, kind of participate in them versus doing them all myself. So hiring was out of busyness for sure. Um, but then also I started to feel like, okay, I think I want to have somebody that helps me start to build a team. And I think a lot of that did also come from, again, RESACon and seeing other successful stagers that had small teams. And I
Mhm.
was intrigued by that and what that could mean, not only for my business, but for my personal time as well.
So let's talk about the first employee that you hired. Are they still with you?
Uh, Yes, first employee, yes. I had somebody early on that worked for me for a short time, like a month or so, maybe 6 weeks, that didn't work out as a bad hire. But then
Hmm.
right after that, I hired someone my lead stager, who is still with me. That was 2021, and she's amazing. And then 2024, so just about a year ago, I hired a stylist.
Were you already having yourself on payroll before you hired your employees? Or did that start that whole process of, okay, now I'm going to put myself on payroll, I'm going to
Yeah,
do the whole paying employee tax thing?
yeah.
Um,
I didn't put myself on payroll
okay.
until 2024.
Okay.
So even though I had hired a stager, she was on payroll before I was, and that was a tax
Hmm.
accountant. They had
Suggestion. Hmm.
decision. Yep, yep,
So then when you decided to hire that first person, that was all new processes and systems that you had to set up. Did you have somebody locally who was like, "Oh, this is somebody I would suggest working with"? Did, somebody in your family help navigate that? I feel like that's also a lot of the reason why people don't make that leap to hire legit is because it seems so scary and daunting.
mhm,
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that was like for you to calm some people's nerves that is not as scary as it may seem.
Yeah. I think one person that comes to mind is my sister-in-law. She's owned her own business for a while, and so has been a good sounding board of, like payroll. Who do you
Mhm.
use for payroll? Um, and asking other small business owners who I know, what about workers' comp? I need an insurance guy. So definitely going to the people in your network,
Mhm.
real estate agents. They always, if I need a referral for an accountant or, insurance, whatever it is, go to that network of people that you know and trust and ask questions. Nobody knows everything. And so it's
Nope.
important to ask questions.
Did you have a CPA set up before that then?
Yeah, we've had a
Okay.
CPA, yep, for, since the beginning.
Oh,
Yep.
so smart. That is so good of you.
Yeah, yeah, and we have a different CPA now, but he played a key role in really getting me started. He introduced me to QuickBooks. He paid for my QuickBooks for the
Oh.
first, like, 4 or 5 years that we were with him and really taught me how to use it, and that
Mhm.
was, key.
So are you the one that's managing all of that, and, like, all of the HR in-house, I'm assuming?
Yes, I do have a bookkeeper.
Okay.
So I have a bookkeeper that reconciles my books. She pays my sales tax every month, and then reconciles at the end of the year, virtual. Um, but then, yeah, I run payroll. I am in QuickBooks every week. You know, tagging stuff for where it should go, and etc.
Do you enjoy that part of the business?
Enjoy is strong. I'm not a numbers person by nature, like a lot of
Mhm.
creatives. My husband has been a huge, uh,
Thank God for those husbands that know their numbers. My husband went to school for a bit for accounting, so we have a business together as well. And I'm like, you do the numbers part. But my role at RESA lately, I love statistics, and I never realized I did. But knowing the data, how to find it, and what to do with it, like, is so valuable that I've learned to love that aspect of math. But I never thought I would. And Ashley Provost also said the same thing. In the beginning, the numbers really scared her until she realized how to use them to her benefit.
yeah, now they're super interesting to me. Like I'm in QuickBooks looking at my profit and loss and my revenue, etc. And it's exciting to
Hmm.
see the change from year to year, or it's motivating. If you've got a month that is slower than it was last year, like that motivates me to pursue more business.
Definitely.
So
Speak.
even
Go
though
ahead.
my husband is so helpful in the numbers aspect, budgeting, etc., like I think you still have to know it.
You do.
You have to know your books. You have to know where you're making money, where you're spending money, uh, as a business owner.
Are you looking at that like on a month to month basis and then adjusting things as necessary? Like, "Oh, okay, I see that we didn't have as many stages last month. I'm going to have to move some things around," or like how frequently are you looking at it and then making adjustments in your business based on what you're seeing?
Um, I am in QuickBooks every week. Um,
That's good.
do look at it monthly and kind of see. I compare it to last year. I've always been someone who operates on I purchase when I need it
Hmm.
versus purchase in advance. Now that has changed a little bit the longer I'm in business, and where I will purchase in advance, just knowing historically what's coming
Hmm.
if there's a need. So in terms of adjustments, yeah, I think more so it's me looking back and motivating me to make that phone call, to
Hmm.
send that email, to get into a realtor's office to try and drum up more business. So that's kind of how I look at my finances and how I um, make changes.
And you guys are a team of three now, is it?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
And how many stages do you do each week with a team of three?
Usually two. It can be, so last year in 2024 we did 60.
Oh, wow.
total in the year, which is not big, but I have also come to realize, like, I don't wanna be the big turn and burn stager. I wanna be a
Mhm.
more curated, boutique style stager. So we do have a bigger goal this year of 75. And so I am in growth mode and trying to kind of push my team um, to do bigger, better, more volume. And that is they're excited about that. I can see that they're excited about that. But then at the same time, I also want to be stepping away from those day to day stages and seeking out more business. So it's kind of a balance. I don't necessarily want to hire another stager this year, but if I have to, I will. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
And how long does it take you to do a stage typically? The
Uh,
install portion of it?
yeah. I'd say 4 to 6 hours,
Okay.
depending
That's
on.
not bad at all.
Yeah.
Are you pulling the inventory in advance, or are you allowing the stagers that are working for you to make those decisions?
Nope. So I decide all the furniture, typically. That has been a progression. It was where the three of us would go through my warehouse and look at the furniture and decide, like, okay, like, I think this and this and this. Now it's evolved to me making the list of furniture ahead of time, and
Mm.
then either all three of us pack together or just they pack based on the furniture list. So it's always me making the furniture decision.
And are you buying wholesale for your furniture
I do,
decisions, or
yeah.
okay?
Yep, yep. So I started wholesale buying about 2 years ago, probably,
Okay.
and that's been super fun. I'm glad I finally made that plunge.
Has it streamlined your system a little bit more, being able to know that, like, the pieces that you like, you're gonna get them again and not just hope that they're gonna be on the shelves?
Yeah, and you know, you get more unique things. That's
Mhm,
that's the part
definitely.
that I like the most. Like, it's not stuff that somebody shopping local retailers can get.
Do you use Stageforce or another inventory tracking system?
So I have been using a very um, basic software called Sortly. I don't know if you've
Okay. I haven't heard of that one yet.
However, it's on my calendar in the next couple of weeks to shift to Stageforce. And kind of out of the fact that Sortly is changing their parameters, and it's
Mhm.
going to become more expensive than. And I've been wanting to do Stageforce, but
Yeah. Yeah,
it's expensive.
switching and making that change and setting up time. So you stage where it snows a lot. And I moved from California to an area where it snows a lot a few years back. And
Okay.
I just remember that first winter, I was like, how do stagers do this in the winter? Does that affect the number of stages that you're getting done in the winter seasons? Or do you guys just like plow through it because you're used to that?
Yeah. Well, it's hard.
Yeah,
Um, and the cold is almost sometimes as hard as
worse.
the amount of snow or worse. Yep. So amount of stages, uh, you know, the industry or the market just naturally slows
Exactly.
in Minnesota, and so but that I had my busiest month ever last February,
Mm,
and just this past January had the biggest January I've ever had. So even though it's winter and cold and snowy, I
people are still selling.
they're still selling, yep, and
Mm,
it's slower, so a stage will be slower for sure on
yeah.
a snowy day or a cold day, and, you know, my team, especially, there was, a week in January where they were pretty beat up because it was so cold, and, I kinda had to give them a pep talk and lots of thank yous, and because it's not fun when it's sub-zero and you're going
No,
in and out of a house, and yeah.
no. So when it gets in that slower season, do you ever have downtime where you're not doing installs? And if so, what are you doing in that time with your team? Do you use that as training time? Do you use that time to look through your inventory and clean house? I'm always
Yep,
interested to hear about, especially in the snowy areas,
yeah.
what you guys do because you have a lot more downtime than the stagers in California who could stage all year round.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So in like November, December, we do exactly what you're saying. We pull things that we aren't using, And, like so many, we try and sell them on Facebook Marketplace, which it's not a great time of year to sell, but we at least know what we want to sell come
Mhm.
January, February, March. So definitely cycle through inventory, donate things that we're not using anymore. That's a big part of it. Um, and then, yeah, looking at processes, trying to figure out, how do we how do we improve our processes? How do we get into sort of a rhythm with social media and posting, and what does that look like? And
You guys are doing so good on social media. I've
well,
always admired your Instagram, I have. I told Gina I was having my interview with you today. She's like, "Oh, she's the one you always talk about how much you like her social media." I said, it is because it's just so organic. I could tell you guys aren't trying too hard, and if you are, it doesn't show.
yeah.
And it's just unique, and it's a mix of getting to know your team plus seeing all of your work. It's
Well, thank
lovely.
you.
You're doing a
Thank you.
great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just us figuring it out. I've always been the one that does the posts and,
Okay.
what's going on, and as a team, we're friends, and so we have fun together. And I think it's important to show that authentic side of us, because that's
Mhm.
who we are on staging day too. So I don't have a problem showing the fun stuff along with the pretty stuff and the
Course.
serious
The
stuff.
stuff that sells. So, managing a team that you're friends with, what is the best advice you have for others that are in that position about, setting boundaries, and just, how do you deal with things when they come up if it's not necessarily a comfortable conversation, knowing that it's somebody that you are friendly with? Do you struggle with that at all?
Yeah, it's hard. I think especially, females, we have a lot of emotions and those can get in the way. And so really for me it's a mindset of um, I'm the business owner at the end of the day, and I need to either make a decision about something or delegate something or guide
Mhm.
them in something. And and we didn't start out as friends, and so they both have that mentality of I am the boss, so to speak, and they are just super respectful of that at the end of the day. And I think that is one of the best aspects of our team, is that
Mhm.
we respect each other mutually. um, Anytime that I do need to kind of put that boss hat on, uh, they they don't mind it and they're respectful of it.
Well, you are lucky.
I know I am.
You're definitely blessed in that way.
I know,
Yeah.
I really am.
So
I
then what did you do when you were hiring to get such good employees? That's what I wanna know.
I don't know, the first my lead stager was, sort of a friend of a friend. I put an ad
Okay.
on Indeed and she saw it on there, so and I interviewed her and somebody else, and I hired the other person first because I thought they had
Mm,
better availability, and that other person was
didn't work.
yeah. And so I went back to Tiffany, and, she does like to kinda jab me now, like, "Oh, I wasn't your first choice," but, um and so I think
You had to kiss a frog first, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Hiring people that are um, like-minded has been really important for me as a small business owner. Um, People that I know I can trust,
Mhm,
and then obviously the skills. But I think that kind of the trust factor and reliability factor and attention to detail for me, it actually comes even before. Like, that's gotta be there as well as the skill,
I
the
agree.
skill, yeah.
You could teach people things. The other part of it, that's inherent to who they are and harder
Yeah,
to manage for sure.
yeah. And my stylist came as a referral from an agent. This agent knew, Jill, and Jill reached out to me on email, and at first I was like, "Nah," we have people reach out all the time, and so I
Mhm.
ignored her a little bit, but then I was like, I kinda need someone, and so I'm gonna have coffee with her," and I could tell right away that she had the skills, and, So yeah, that's
And
been
did you bring them both on part-time or did you start full-time? What was
no.
that process like?
Yep. They're both part-time as
Okay.
needed on payroll. So they both have the flexibility, which that was important to me, the flexibility to for me to text them today and say, or add something to their calendar today that might be for Monday. And
Mhm.
one of them does have another job that she does,
Okay.
but um, she makes her own hours in that, and so she knows that if there's something that she can't change that she already has scheduled, that she can tell me, and it's fine.
Work around it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, they're both very adaptable and quite available, which I feel very fortunate about.
And did they have a background in design or was that something that you trained them on, the staging aspect of it?
Yeah, no, it's been uh training. I mean, a lot of people, they just liked to decorate and
Mhm.
style. My lead stager did do a little bit of an interior design online course,
Okay.
and my stylist, they um, renovated their home, and so she did. That's kind of the extent of their background, though. So a lot of it has been training them.
And did you do like a sit down interview and a practical interview? Or did you just do a face to face interview?
Uh, a sit down interview, and then like, let's give you a try. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't hire them and say, sign this paperwork, you're my employee now. It was, let's let's see how things go for a few weeks, and um as they kind of learned how I operated and what I was looking for, and then me, obviously, I'm seeing how they worked as well. So um yeah.
I love that. So you've totally been able to help them build a brand new skill set too.
Yeah,
That's pretty
totally.
cool. That
Yeah.
must feel very good at the end of the day to know that
Yeah.
you've been able to do that for somebody, to be
Yeah,
able to make their
it is.
passion, turn into their career. You're doing that for people. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And they're the first to say they love their job. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
So let's get into the audits.
Okay.
So, how long were you in business before you had your first audit? I assume this was your first audit, but
My
maybe
first
I'm wrong in that.
Yep, nope, and it was, about 8.5 years,
Okay.
so a while. Yeah.
And is that something that like always hung over your head that this could come up? Were you fearful of that? Was it something that you just didn't think about?
I don't know, I don't think I was not fearful of it, and I didn't think about it a lot, but I'm pretty sure it was Michelle Minch that said once
Mhm.
at RESACon, like, "If it's not a matter of if you will be audited, it's when."
When?
So that
Exactly.
had always been kind of in the back of my mind, um, but yet I still, when I got the email, was surprised.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so, did you have systems in place that you feel helped you through the process of the audit, or that you, while going through the process, realized you needed to put into place? Either
Yeah.
way.
Well, I think, having a payroll system, you have to have having an accounting system. You need records,
Mm.
because that's what they want to see. It's not just your tax returns. They want to see, employee records and um, payroll records, and so those systems were key. Plus, then having an accountant that I could pull into those emails from the auditor and say, hey, this auditor is looking for this, 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 and this. Can you supply them with that? And it just is very fast and easy for them. Um, so both of those, payroll and accounting, hugely, you have to have that.
Or else it's going to be a real struggle for you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know if I didn't have those things. If I was doing my own accounting, I don't know how I would have done it.
So, was it from the state or the federal government?
It was from the state. Yeah, from the
Okay.
state unemployment insurance.
Unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And how long did the process take altogether?
Probably about 2 weeks.
Oh, that's really not that bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to compare it to, but from the time I first got an email, and that first email was kind of cryptic, I was like, is this a real email? Okay, I'll log in to, to my profile and answer a couple questions. And then I got another email, saying that I would be getting a call or follow-up email. So
Yeah, it's
I was like,
interesting that they email. You'd think they'd send like a letter. That seems so informal.
the letter may have came after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you first saw that, what was the first thing that you did? That email,
Uh, Copied my accountant.
which
And
thank gosh you had one.
yeah,
Yeah.
hey, Paul, I'm being audited. Here's the information I got. And he, his email to me was, because it was January,
hmm
getting ready for taxes, and he said something like, kind of a pain or inconvenient, but you'll be fine. So
And what kind of things did they have you submit? For those that are listening and have never gone through it and are afraid it will happen to them, so they
yeah.
can know to be
So they
prepared.
they were looking at a particular year, so it was the 2023 tax year for me. They
Okay.
were not looking at your at least this, they weren't looking at books for 8 years. It
Well,
was
that's nice.
the tax year. I was chosen at random, so there was no reason that I had been flagged for anything. I just was chosen at random.
Mhm.
And then I had to supply like tax returns for that year, revenue records, payroll records, um, who I 1099, who I did W-2s for, all those types of things, because they really were looking for, did I pay people that should have been employees that I paid as
Mhm.
contract workers?
So of the people that are contractors, what kind of businesses do they own? It's like your moving company, your bookkeeper, who else?
Yep. I also had, yep, movers, bookkeepers. I have a freelance graphic designer who does reports for my consultations. So they're a contract worker. Um, I have used a handyman. He was a contract worker. Um, my stylist, who I have now hired as an employee, I started out as a 1099. And I feel like I probably, and I don't know if there's a rule for, how long can you have
Keep them.
somebody, yeah,
Mhm.
versus when you hire. I probably pushed the envelope with that with her, but they, for whatever reason, didn't flag me for that. In hindsight now, after I went through that process, I was like, okay, I got to figure out so that when I do hire again, how do I do that? And I think it's you hire on a 90-day trial basis,
Mm.
pretty early on. You could do that, the um, in the field interview, so to speak, for a week
Yep.
or two, but then hire them as a 90-day trial basis so that if they aren't a good fit, you can release them without repercussions.
Man, it's so funny because I was just having a conversation earlier this week with somebody who's been in the industry for a really long time, and they own their own business, and they're talking about switching into a position of working for other stagers instead. And I was talking about some of the concerns I would look out for, like, you know, what could make you a real 1099 versus a W-2. So, for all the stagers that are listening right now that think that what they're doing by having their stylist a 1099, and they've been doing that for as long as they've been working with them, what would your advice be to that stager after what you've gone through with the audit?
Yeah. If you are, excuse me, if you're telling somebody, if they're using your materials and you're telling them where to go, when to go, they're your employee. They're not a contract worker. Um, and so that's the biggest thing. And if you get audited for that, it's my understanding that you would be penalized
Mhm.
financially for that. I don't know what that looks like from a dollar standpoint, um, but it would.
Yeah, because the government wants all of that unemployment, the social security taxes, all of that stuff that they're missing out on. So you're going to be liable for that. And then the fines, the
Mhm.
back pay fines.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
scary, especially if you've been doing it for a few years.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, it's like everything, it takes effort to learn how to use a payroll system and what's involved in that. But once you get it set up, I just ran it before I got on this podcast with you. Takes 5 minutes to run payroll every 2 weeks. Um, and then you have all that data information at your fingertips to be able to provide to an auditor, when you do get audited, that, you've been doing this and you're in compliance.
And so do your employees clock in and out using your payroll system, or are you doing that manually?
Nope. So Gusto has a
Oh, Gusto. Yes, I know
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. It's great.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I looked into like ADP at the beginning, and from a cost, it was more than I wanted to spend. And even though Gusto felt like, oh, and then I got to learn this, but it's been great. Set up. Yeah.
So definitely worth the investment then, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Just even just to have peace of mind.
Yes, and I think,
Yes.
if you are growing a team, you have to be willing to you have to know your numbers so that you know that you can, Gusto's $100 a month just to have that software. You have to incorporate that in like everything into your pricing so that you are profitable at the end of the day.
And did that take some time for you to figure out? Obviously, before you brought on employees, you didn't know what all of those overhead costs were, or were you able to discuss that kind of stuff with people from your local chapter?
Um, some of it, again, I go back to, RESA con and
Mm-hmm.
learning the importance of knowing your overhead. I also always think back to 2020 and, that March, April, one of the first things I did was make a list of what's my overhead, what can I cut. And
Yep.
so I just did um, a review of that again at the end of 2024 to say, what's my overhead, what can I cut, um, versus, or what can I add, so that you
Yep.
always have your finger on the pulse of what you're spending your money on. It's not just movers, it's all the software and supplies, obviously. So yeah.
Are you surprised by the amount of overhead that you have as a business owner?
Well, the biggest thing is a warehouse. So that's weighty, and I don't even have a big warehouse. I have 2,800 square feet. So, but now that I'm in growth mode, there's the potential where I will need more space.
Mm,
And so that overhead, yeah, that can be daunting. And I know there's a lot of stagers that don't want inventory because of
mhm.
that. However, I think with my background in the furniture industry, I was from the very beginning, I knew I wanted inventory because I was used to going into a warehouse and
Yep.
looking at rows and rows of furniture and decor.
That
And
wasn't scary to you.
no,
It was normal.
I
Yeah.
wanted. And so
Yeah.
that's what I want. I do when I think about, 10 years from now or whenever it is retiring, what do I do with what do I do with all this? Um, that's daunting to me, so I just ignore it right now.
Well, hopefully you'll have all of the systems in place where you could sell the business. And there has been a lot of growth in this industry. I've been involved in the industry on and off since 2005. So I've seen a tremendous amount of change from people doing it like as a side gig, under the table, all of the things that you look at now and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people were operating their businesses that way. And now more than ever, especially because I am on social media a lot for RESA, and I see so many young people getting into this industry and wanting to be employees, not even just like own a business. And that to me is so exciting to see because it was not like that even 7 years ago. It was mostly people doing it themselves. Maybe they had somebody helping them here and there, family member, a neighbor, somebody from church. But now you're seeing these businesses really, really grow, and more they are getting to a point where they're able to sell them. So maybe you'll get lucky and that'll happen for you.
Yeah, well, that is something that my business coach and I will be working on at some point. I don't know that it'll be this year, but she definitely is of the mindset that I need to set myself up so that I can do that
Yeah.
whenever I want to. So
Yeah. I mean, it takes a lot of work to grow a business, a lot of work. And I mean, you can go and work for somebody else, being a stager, and not have to worry about all of the worries that business owners have to deal with. So, in my opinion, if you're going to go through all of that for years and years, might as well do a little bit extra to get yourself set up so you could sell it?
for sure, for sure, yeah,
Because there's no retirement unless you're building that yourselves.
yeah,
So that's another part of the bigger picture that people need to think about when they get into the industry is like what's that exit plan going to look like? And
For sure.
you know,
Yep.
it's not easy to get it to a point where you feel like you can walk away from it. And it sounds like you're getting there. It sounds like you're getting not to walk away, but to not do the staging portion, to be in the
Yeah.
business every single day. Are you afraid of that transition to do more of the office sales side, or is that something that you're like, oh, I can't wait until that's where we're at?
Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. I think I will always want um, my hand in it to some degree.
Hmm.
That could change, but um, I'm excited about the progression that I'm in of getting into more of the sales side and less in the day to day. As long as I have the right team in place, there's no
Hmm.
reason why I can't do that. So
Definitely. And it sounds like you're doing a good job. Your track record so far with employees is by far the most impressive I've heard.
yeah,
Only one person you had to let go. That's not too bad.
yeah, yeah, I feel pretty lucky. That's for sure. They're awesome.
So you were the VP of membership in 2024 for your chapters. Am I right on that?
Yep, I was that. I also was secretary
Okay.
for 2 years prior to that. I took 1 year off. So, yep, I've had 3 years of board volunteer.
And your chapter has grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. Like your chapter is one that I'm like, oh, I need to go and take a trip out there because they
Yeah,
have a large enough group. They're doing some really cool and exciting, fun things.
yeah, we love
What's
it.
it been like getting involved in that community? And how are you able to see them as not competitors and then instead as your peers in the industry? Because there are some people who are listening to this who are probably like, I don't know about this whole chapter thing, hanging out with somebody who's out there bidding against the same jobs as me. I don't
Yeah,
get it. So how can you make them understand why that's been beneficial for you and your business?
yeah. Um, I think I don't know our chapter. I kind of see it like my team. I'm really lucky to be in a group with stagers, mostly women, couple men that we collaborate. We um, try to support each other. And I don't know if it's a Midwestern thing. There's a lot of stagers here that are not in our chapter, and
Mm.
I would say they are the ones that feel more threatened, and that it's a competition versus collaborate. But as a board, on the boards that I've been on, and the one that I'm not on this year, it's spoken of openly, like we are here to collaborate and lift each other up and learn from each other and teach each other versus we're competitors. Now, certainly, we know that we are going for the same business a lot of times, um, but at the end of the day, there's enough work for everybody, and if we all learn how to price well and um, stage professionally, it's going to lift the industry as a whole and
Mhm.
going to show our particular market in the Twin Cities, like this is the group of stagers that are in this market and they're professional and they do a great job and they are competitively priced. Not one person is pricing super low and one person really high. So I think it helps to just show the realtors in our area as well that we are collaborators as a whole.
And the realtors are used to doing that themselves, that's totally normal for them. So you should align yourselves with what they do. It's working for
Yeah,
them. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I think the longer you're in business, the longer you realize, like, it's okay to not get every job. And it's okay. It's good to admire somebody else's work and let them know, like, you admire them and you admire what they're doing. And be able to send a text to somebody and ask, what would you do in this situation? One Kelly Zabel is a RESA member. She's on the
Hmm.
board this
Yep.
year. We our warehouses are probably within 5 miles from each other. We go after a lot of the same business. We refer each other to realtors when we can't do a job. Um,
Yes.
and I'm doing a job in a couple of weeks for a referral from Kelly that she couldn't do. And that agent was like, "Oh, we love Kelly. Sorry we haven't used it." I'm like, "Don't apologize to me. Kelly's awesome. She does amazing work." So it's not about competition. And when you know the people that are in the industry, I think that helps too. It's not just a face or a company name. To know those people and how they do business and how they operate as a person, I think is really important.
How quickly did you get involved with your chapter? Was that something you did early on, or did it take you a little bit to?
I think I was in business about 2 years before I learned
Okay,
about it. Yeah. So
that's not too bad.
yeah.
Do you think a lot of the stagers locally that haven't gotten involved, do you think they just don't know about the chapter? Do you think that they're just so new that it's still, they haven't realized the value of
It's some of both.
the support?
Yeah, I think there's some that don't see the value in it. And then, of course, some that just don't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a mix. Yeah.
Well, what is your three pieces of advice for the stager who's just getting started out in this industry and thinking about owning a business of their own?
Yeah. Three pieces of advice. Number one, you have to be willing to take some risks to sort of fake it till you make it, so to speak. Like, you're not going to have the best product out there immediately, but just get something out there, whether it's a social media post or, I have no experience staging, but I'm going to try and stage this house. Like, if you really want to stage or start a business, you have to be willing to make some mistakes and try stuff that you're uncomfortable with. So that certainly is one thing. um, Having support from family or from a group like RESA is super valuable. To be able to come home at the end of the day and vent and talk things through, because there's no, when it's just you,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get out of your own head and talk things through, whether it's with family or another person in the industry, I think is super valuable. Um, and joining RESA has been hugely important for me. And I had no idea. I don't even know how I heard about it, honestly. Um, I have to think about that. Uh, but the RESA cons, I think I've been to maybe 5 of them now. And you always learn something. And I always say, like, I'm gonna go again, because even if I just learn like one thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's worth it. And then the um, just sense of community that you get and friendships that are formed with stagers from all across the country is really great. And again, going back to, like, so many of us are solopreneurs that don't have a team to
Mm-hmm.
um, bounce
To
things.
vent with. Yeah, even just the venting alone. I mean, of course, we all want resources and advice, but sometimes you do just need to vent to somebody that
Yeah,
gets it.
that
And
totally gets it. That you can
yeah,
sit at a table at RESACon for breakfast, and they know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, it's nice to not have to explain every single little detail about why something is frustrating or why you're struggling with something. Because this is an isolating industry for sure, especially if you don't put yourself out there and get involved with the community.
Yeah,
I feel like the people that do get involved with their local communities, they have a higher success rate. They're happier. They probably don't stress as much as you can avoid stressing as a business owner. I think that's always there. But
yeah.
if there is a place or a community for you to go to locally, I highly encourage you to get involved, because RESA chapters are a great resource to connect with people locally about, like she said, pricing, understanding what the standard is, especially if you're new to this industry. There are a lot of mistakes that you're going to have to make on your own, but if you can avoid making some of those by just having some conversations with people who've done it before, why wouldn't you?
Right,
You
right.
know?
Yep. And I think also, an aspect for new people getting into it would be to recognize that you might like to decorate and pick paint colors, but if you don't have a sense for business at the end of the day, it's going to be tough to own a staging business versus work inside of one. Um,
Definitely.
because so as we talked about at the beginning, so much of it is it's not staging; it's
No.
being a business. So
The easy part is the staging. I mean, besides the physical aspect of it, that's
fun,
the part
that's the
you
fun
enjoy
part.
and are passionate about.
Yes,
So it's going to come easy to you.
yes,
The numbers and the bidding and the sales and the managing everything, that's where it gets rough.
yeah.
So on that note, for those stagers that are already in business, already have the employees, what advice do you have for them to just like keep all of it going in a positive direction when things get stressful? Do you have anything that works for you when you feel like it's unmanageable or stressful that you can always count on, whether that's your faith, going to the gym, talking to your friends? How do you get through those tough times?
Yeah, all of the above. I have a strong faith, so certainly that prayer is hugely important to me. When I am in a slow um, time, I pray about it, and so that's big. That is hugely important to me, as much for my mental health as my physical health. And I would say, like, the longer I'm in staging, the more I'm like, I have to do weight training. I have to take care of my body. I have to,
Mhm.
do a sauna so I can detox, because it is a physical job. It's a mental marathon, and so yep, exercise is hugely important. And then, like I kind of mentioned, I've always made it a practice to not work weekends. I am very guilty of working evenings on my phone with posting on social media and stuff, but weekends, um, I say no. And I still have agents that are like, "Can you meet me at a house on Sunday?" No, I can't. I can do it Monday. And every time I say, no to somebody, and here's why, they're super respectful of it. So don't be afraid to um, not work 7 hours, 7 days.
Yeah, and tell people what your boundaries are in a nice way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's why you got into this business, not so that you could do what everybody else tells you to do. It's so you could set your own boundaries and your own
yeah,
perfect work-life balance. So a lot of
yeah,
people do forget that. And I understand, especially in the beginning, you gotta grind to make it work. But now that you're at a point where you've obviously made it work, it's important to refocus on some of those other aspects of your life that maybe you didn't focus on as much while you were growing the business,
yeah.
probably.
I think also for me this year, 2025, I'm kind of going back to the basics with some stuff, like making um, networking a higher priority again. So
Hmm.
almost all of my business now is referral business, which is amazing. And so, how do I nurture those relationships um, on an ongoing basis, whether it's with coffee or a thank you note or dropping food off or getting into an office and bringing food, but just getting back to networking, because that is an aspect that I've um, practiced all along, is grow my sphere as big as I can. Like, do you want to meet a new agent? It's always yes. Are you open to new business? Always yes. Like, you have to have. Sometimes I hear of stagers that work with a couple of teams of agents. I'm like, that's it. Like,
That's actually something I was going to ask you next is how many agents you work with and how often you are bringing on somebody new.
yeah. I think last year I worked with around 40 based on the consultations and stagings. Um,
It's a good amount.
yeah, I think so. And I always say yes to new business. If there's an agent that reaches out to me or somebody introduces me, refers me, it's always yes. Because they're, like, agents always are just like stagers, like they're looking at their business and they're figuring out, do I want to make a change with my stager?
Hmm.
Sometimes agents want more than one stager because we're not always all available.
Yeah.
And so the bigger sphere of agents that you can um, get to know, that you can nurture that relationship, that you can do a great job at, um, the the better your business is going to be because
And
they
what
are.
does that networking look like to you in the beginning? Were you going to like Women's Council of Realtor meetings? Where were you meeting these agents?
Um, I said, like early on, I was what was called a preferred vendor at a Keller Williams office. So I
Hmm.
think I paid for that.
Yep.
I did that for a year or two and then figured out like, man, I'm not really getting a lot out of this. Um, Once I would start to meet an agent, I would ask, do you have a weekly meeting? Can I come and talk for 5 minutes and talk about my services? So that was huge early on. And then I am better one on one with somebody versus a.
Hmm.
So whenever I could schedule a coffee with somebody, then and now, that's my preferred method of networking because I think it allows just you to get to know somebody on a personal level, not just professional level, and
Hmm.
start to develop a relationship because relationship is at the core of my business that I value that person that I'm serving, and that realtor is as much of a client of mine as their home seller.
Oh, yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're going to do business with them over and over again. And you'll be lucky if you see that seller one other time, as long
Right,
as you're a business owner, unless you're doing design work as well. So
right,
that
right.
makes sense. Those are
Yeah,
the definitely the relationships that matter. Not that the seller doesn't, but
right. Yeah, it's really that
for
age.
longevity, the agent's going to be the one for sure.
It's huge. Yeah.
Well, I have really enjoyed talking to you today, Susie, and I think that there are going to be a lot of little insights that stagers who are just getting started will take from this, as well as those that have been in business. And what I think I have taken away from this is get your systems in process. Susie's been a great example of a stager who did it the right way. I will say, of all the business owners I've spoken to in this industry, it's not usual that um, you have all those systems in place, the bookkeepers, hiring somebody the right way, all of those systems and processes. If you could get those in place in the beginning of your business, you're going to be way better off, even if you never get audited. But like Michelle Minch says, it's not a matter of when, if, it's a matter of when. So do what Susie did. Contact Susie if you have questions. She's a
Yeah.
great friend in the staging industry. She's super kind and always willing to share her insights. And if you're local, definitely go and check out their chapter because I know I would be there every single time you had a meeting. It looks like a great
Uh,
group of people. Are you going to go to RESACon this year?
I think so.
Me and Shell, we had the most amount of speakers we've had submitted. Over 65 people submitted to speak this year. So we
Oh,
will be going back to doing 4 sessions at a time versus 3 because there was just, I mean, such good topics. We couldn't turn anybody away. I mean, we're gonna have to turn some people away, but it's gonna be a really, really incredible lineup.
awesome.
So,
Yeah.
especially if you're struggling with making a consistent profit, we do have quite a few different topics around that idea, and it's going to be a good time. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. So, yeah.
Yes, even if it's, just hanging out with your stager friends, it's a good time, but you'll learn a lot. I noticed a couple times during this interview you mentioned, I learned this at RESACon, I learned this at RESACon, I learned this at RESA, and I can't tell you how happy that makes my heart because our small team of 4 works so hard to provide you guys value and to know that all of that work is paying off. It just encourages me to do it more and more and more and give you more. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing your insights and being who
Yeah.
you are in this industry. I can't wait to see where you are in 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. Looking forward to it as well.
All right. And for those of you who are watching or listening on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe so you could hear the next podcast. I have Kathy Hobbs coming up next, and you don't want to miss out on her story. She has a background in HGTV. She built her own warehouse this last year, and she just released a new book. So I will be talking to her about all of those things. And please do give Susie a follow on Instagram and like and comment on all of the fun things that you see happening over there. I will put her link in the description below, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye.